This is a BBC podcast. You can get all our podcasts and our terms of use at bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Outlook from the BBC World Service. I'm Jo Fidgen with more extraordinary personal stories from around the world. Today, a child's diary of the Chechen War, growing up in the Chilean resistance, and close encounters with polar bears. Polina Жеребцова was 14 years old and living in the Chechen capital Grozny when the Second War with Moscow began. Over 3 years of conflict, Polina kept a diary of what was happening to her and her city and has recently had it published. I spoke to Polina from a hospital where she's still being treated for the injuries she sustained at the time.
Our house was bombed. Our neighbors' houses were bombed. If you remember the war chronicles from the Second World War about Stalingrad, Grozny was exactly like Stalingrad. There was not a single building that remained intact. It was ruins all over the place. Our house was bombed so heavily that the floors fell down, really. And there were no floors, and we had to sort of live in the cellar.
Why were you and your mother living in the cellar?
What the authorities said at the time, that there were green corridors for the refugees, that they could board the buses and leave the city. In the reality, that was not the case. The military was shooting those buses, and each seat on the bus cost money. We didn't have the money. Me and my mom, we traded on the local market. We sold newspapers. And I was wounded. We couldn't pay for anything, and we had to stay in town. And since we had no place to go, we had to stay in that house, which really looked like a Titanic. It leaned onto one side.
What facilities did you have in the house? I mean, did you still have a bathroom? Did you have a kitchen?
Нет, конечно, нет. Не было воды. Мы сначала набирали из...
No, there was no water, no toilet, no kitchen. We first were gathering water from the fire pump. Unfortunately, we knew that there was a cat who died there in the pump, but there was no other source of water, and everyone at all, were drinking water from that pump. All our neighbors and old people and children, all of us. And then there was no water, and we had to gather the snow that was grey and black because of all the fires, and we melted it on the fire. And when you grab the whole bunch of snow, you only can melt enough for half a cup. All our neighbors lived in the same way. It was like a blockade. The Chechen fighters haven't yet left the city, and the Russians haven't yet entered it. So we didn't really have anything. It was like a total chaos. We had to sleep on the floors in the corridors where there was nothing. It was snowing and raining through the windows and walls, and many of the people I know, many of my neighbors and me and my family, we all got sick because of that. We were living like that for 4 or 5 months, and I was wounded. I had about 16 shrapnels in me, and my mom had 1.
What kind of treatment were you able to get at the time for your wounds?
Дело в том, что меня ранило на рынке. Еще война не началась. Это российская страна.
I was wounded on the 21st of October 1999. The war hasn't started yet. The Russians have dropped a bomb on the market, which was a sort of very ancient market, like an Eastern bazaar. There was about 4,000 people there. There were no shops. It's just people exchanging goods for money. And nobody really knows how many people died. And me and my mom were 2.5 blocks away from the epicenter of the blast. And I had 16 little shrapnels in my leg, and my mom had 1. So next day, I was taken to a hospital, to a local hospital. They sort of gave me an injection. They couldn't really do anything. There was no electricity, no equipment to do X-ray or anything. So me and my mom, we just tried to do it ourselves, really. We picked the small shrapnels from my wound and we peed on them as a means of antiseptic, But 5 months later, when the Russians came into town, they had the emergency hospitals, and they did one surgery for me for one big a shrapnel piece that was very deep and that was cutting through my tissue. So I'm thankful for that. That was the only help that I got. While everywhere else, in the local hospitals, we had to pay cash, and there was not really anyone we could ask for help or could rely on.
Were you suffering physically in other ways because of the hardships that you were facing?
In the year 2000, after the war, I started to experience problems with my heart. Besides that, because of the lack of food and malnutrition and all the snow, the dirty snow that I had to eat and drink, really, my liver and my stomach are not working properly anymore. So I cannot really eat anything apart from porridge. My teeth have fallen out, all of them. I lost a lot of hair, and I generally feel like a very sick person. And that's not only about me, all of the people there whom I know who survived all that, they're in the equally poor health. There was also some problems with the radiation because of the amount of weapon that was used during the time. We're not aware what was used actually, but there was a lot of cancer in the aftermath of the conflict.
How did you cope emotionally and mentally with everything that you were experiencing at the time?
I don't really know. It was very, very hard. But I found a way of releasing my anger and anxiety through the diary. It was like my friend. I trusted him. I tried to get away from the reality. I thought we were going to die. And I thought maybe then somebody will find this diary. I tried to be as detailed as possible, and I wrote about my neighbors, about the people dying, everyone I knew. Every little detail I picked up and I put into my diary, and I think that's what saved me.
We're going to hear an extract from your diary now.
28th of October 1999. The aeroplane started to buzz. We heard the first bomb drop. We crouched in the corner of someone else's house. An explosion. Another explosion. A man in a house across the way screamed. 24th of December 1999. We found a jar of jam. I ate the jam with a spoon until I got sick. Our main food is a glass of water with 1 spoon of flour and a diced onion. 26th of December 1999. Mum is getting angrier and angrier. Her personality is totally ruined, probably from hunger. I try not to snap. My stomach always hurts. I constantly want to eat.
An extract from Polina Zherebtsova's diary. How did you come to get your diary published, Polina?
I was looking for a publisher for 5-6 years in a row. Everyone liked it. They said it's interesting. It has a lot to say. But they were afraid. They told me we don't want to contradict the authorities. We don't want any negative reactions. I couldn't really leave it at that. I had bad dreams. I had my neighbors coming to me in dreams, and I thought that was my duty to do it. So I guess I was lucky. I found one person, one publisher, who read the book, and he called me back in 2 days and said, we will first try to publish 1,000 copies, and if it gets positive feedback, we will publish more. So then they published 2,000 copies. As soon as the news about this diary being published came about, I started to get threats, really. People called me, told me that I shouldn't do it. They threatened me on the phone. I thought I will be, swamped with hate mail. What surprised me most, as soon as it got published, I was getting a lot of mail from the military who were present in that campaign, actually. And they were saying, we're sorry. Please forgive us.
How does it make you feel when you have soldiers apologizing to you?
When I got this mail, I was surprised and also shocked and a little bit disgusted. Well, they asked me for forgiveness, but I'm not God. I cannot forgive.
Polina Zherebtsova. In a moment we'll hear from another woman whose childhood was disrupted by conflict but who responded in a very different way and says she's now grateful for what she learnt from the Chilean resistance to Pinochet.